Hi, my name's Anita Roy. I'm a writer living in Somerset in a small town called Wellington. Now, when I was first asked to write something about nightjars, I was a little perplexed because I'd never seen a nightjar. I don't think I'd ever even heard a nightjar. So the first thing that I did was do a bit of research to try and find out what this little bird was all about. Um, And in the course of my reading around, I came across a really interesting article in the New Scientist about a study of nightjar migration by a group of scientists from Sweden who decided that they would track nightjars on their annual migration route from sub-Saharan Africa right up until the edge of Siberia. And rather than looking at the overall speed and distance of the little bird's migration, they would see if the pattern of migration had any bared any relationship to the phases of the moon. Um, and they found, for the first time, to their astonishment, that it did. The nightjars actually move in pulses. So they fly much further when the moon is in its new moon phase and there's not very much light at night. And when the moon is full, because there are a lot of nocturnal insects that come out to fly around, the nightjars spend much longer in the stopover grounds feeding and stocking up, fueling up for the next kind of lean time, dark time, when there's not so many insects around and they fly further. And I found this a really fascinating idea, the idea that the nightjars were moving literally in synchrony with the moon. It was kind of like a dance between two partners. Um, and that kind of stuck in my head. And the other thing I've been thinking a lot about recently is creation myths, stories of origin. You find these across all human societies throughout the world, throughout history. We love to tell ourselves stories about how we came to be who we are. So I began to think about what it would be like if I were another species, or if I could eavesdrop on another species' own creation myth. And I decided to try and write a creation myth from the point of view of the nightjar, which I'm going to read to you now. In the beginning, earth and moon lived alone, twins born from the same egg. The one blue and green, as iridescent as a starling's throat, the other white, radiant as the lifted wing of a swan. From earth, if you looked up, all you could see was moon. And from moon, if you looked up, all you could see from horizon to horizon was the surface of the earth. They circled around each other, day and night, night and day. In the beginning, when the stars were newly hatched, still wet from their shells. In the beginning, moon and earth were happy. They enjoyed each other's company, and they had nothing better to do, nothing worse, than to dance their endless circling dance. But one day, Moon looked down at her brother and sighed a little sigh. "Don't you wish that there was someone else?" she said. "Don't you wish for others to talk to share our ideas with, to share in our dance?" Brother Earth thought this was a marvellous idea and immediately set to work. He fashioned fish and set them swimming in the streams. He filled the forests with butterflies and birds. He set eagles soaring and swirling in his sky. He set insects to burrow and flit, deer to roam and bears to roar, beavers to build and mice to gnaw. And the air was filled with the sounds of elk crying their deep booming cry in the night, and bitterns booming, tiny squeaks of harvest mice, and the scratch of beetles' wings. And Moon was busy too. She fashioned all the creatures of the night, the bats and badgers, the owls and the wolves, glowworms, fireflies. From her own moonbeams, she fashioned the owl and set his golden eyes alight. She painted patterns on the wings of each moth and then folded them before they were dry. She created the nightingale and, opening his little beak, breathed into him both life and song. And finally she created the nightjar, so tired by this time that she barely had breath left in her. But what she did, she sighed in a little trill into his beak and brought the bird to life. Exhausted by their mighty labours to create every living thing, Moon and Earth settled down to sleep. As the Earth looked up at his sister, her beautiful, wide, white, dreaming face, and looked around at all of creation, he felt satisfied, he felt happy. But then, just as he was about to fall asleep, a thought entered his head. What if something happened while he slept? What if something happened to the moon? This worried him a little, and he woke up a little. And then he had another thought. What if this was not enough for her? What if she tired of all of this creation? What if she tired of him? What else did he have to give? What if, when he fell asleep, she left, and when he woke up and looked up, there was no moon? What would life be like under an empty sky? By this time he was completely awake and terrified. He didn't know what to do, so he rushed to find the spider god in the cave at the base of the mountain. He called, "I need your help!" Slowly emerging, leg by leg by leg, came Anansi the spider god. "It's very late," he said. "What do you want?" "I need your help," implored the moon. "I cannot rest knowing that my sister may leave. Is there anything you can do to help? I cannot be alone." "Leave it with me," said Anansi the spider god, and he made his way up to the very, 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 very top of the highest mountain on earth, and inverting himself and pointing his huge green abdomen to the skies, he began to spin. And he span and he span and he span the whole night through, until, as dawn began to break, his work was done. He left the mountain top and scuttled back to his cave. When Moon awoke, at first she was delighted. Brother Earth, what a beautiful shawl you have gifted me. It is lovely, silver and sparkling and radiant. She was so happy. And all the moon folk on her were delighted too. They tested the threads with their paws, with their claws, with their beaks, with their antennae. And then one by one, they grew curious about this sparkling web that surrounded them. One day, a little carpenter ant decided to find out what happened at the other end of those threads. So, waving goodbye to her friends, she hopped on one and made her way down and down and down, and down and down and down, and finally disappeared far below onto the surface of the earth. And the moon grew lighter by one. The other moon folk looked down. Where did she go? Well, I wonder what she's doing. Do you think she'll be back? What's it like down there? The firefly was next. I think I'll go and find out what happened. I'll bring her back. I'll be home soon. The rest of moonkind watched the firefly's light grow smaller and smaller, dwindling into the distance, until it vanished altogether, and the moon was lighter by two. The other creatures followed, the moths with their feathered antennae ruffling with excitement, the foxes on their padded paws, the bats in a great dark swirl like water down a plug hole. Until finally there were only two creatures left on the moon, Nightingale and the Nightjar. Nightingale, you at least will stay, surely, said the Nightjar. You and I know there is no home like the moon. We are true creatures of the night. But the Nightingale looked around at the empty craters of the moon. But Nightjar, he said, what can we eat? There's no insects left. There is nothing to keep us here. We cannot eat light alone. And with a sigh, he too left. And the great emptying was complete. But Nightjar refused to abandon his post. By the one final thread that linked Brother Earth and Sister Moon, it was stretched taut and singing. Nightjar decided that he would defend this last thread with his life, and he sat in the moon dust and closed his eyes and waited. But as the days went by and the hunger grew and grew in the pit of his belly, finally he could take it no more. He decided he would fly down to earth. He would fly down with his beak open as wide as it would go. He would eat as much as he could cram in his mouth, and then fly straight back up the silver thread back to the moon before she could even notice that he was gone or even realize that she had been abandoned. So he did. Flew, beak agape. But as soon as he arrived on the earth, the final thread snapped and the moon floated free. Brother Earth cried out in anguish. He roared and hurled great spears of lightning into the air. Mountain tops burst and poured out great hot tears of lava. But the moon was already too far away and did not heed his cries, for her face was turned towards the distant stars and full of wonder and the joy of exploration. Down among the leaf litter and the dead wood and the husks and the fungi, Nightjar yearned for his lost home. He looked up through half-closed eyes and sent into the air a song of such raw longing. It shook his body. It rippled through the air like beads of amber threaded on a string, and floated up above the trees, above the snow line, into the far distance, into the air, into the dark sky, across the expanse of night, until finally it reached the moon, and she turned and came a little closer, the better to hear her old companion sing. And on moonless nights, all the creatures of the earth fall silent, for they know, as you know and I do, that the only thing stopping the moon from floating away altogether is the nightjar's soft song, calling and calling her back.